Good morning. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising, Radio Sinoland in Chiang Mai, Thailand, for another article and podcast. This one is extremely interesting, thought-provoking, and has enough hyperlinks to shake a stick at, so be sure and go to the original article, which I will post in the SoundCloud and YouTube podcasts, so you can go back and find it. This one is called China, Bolivia, and Venezuela are proof that social democracy cannot thrive in the global capitalist order. Pictured above, the U.S. orchestrated coup in Bolivia is being led by white supremacist, fascist, Christian fundamentalists, just the type of jackbooted brown shirts the West loves in order to plunder and rape countries around the world. Washington, London, and Paris put fascists and mass murderers in power because they make Wall Street billions in criminal blood money. Pictured center above is one of their psychopathic henchmen, Luis Fernando Camacho, giving a Nazi salute and wearing the Nazi Iron Cross. Notice Jesus Christ is portrayed on the flag on the right. Racist-inspired blood is going to flood the native streets of Bolivia. Read this article and get goosebumps of revulsion. Here we go. The orchestrated, fascist, racist overthrow of the popularly elected socialist government in Bolivia is depressing but not surprising. As a tweet shown in this article says, it's nothing new, as this is U.S. coup number 5 in Bolivia. The tweet saying 1952, 1964, 1970, 1980, 2019, brought to you by the Bolivian oligarchy and the CIA. Western and white supremacist Bolivian capitalists will now plunge it into another Libya while exterminating uncounted thousands of Native Americans, as Russian President Vladimir Putin is already warning. Before 2006, Bolivians, like most peoples of Central and South America, were sodomized, plundered, exterminated, enslaved, mostly natives, watching helplessly as their natural and human resources enriched the local white elite, 1%. These are the ongoing colonial European family lines who started settling in the 15th century, along with Washington, London, and Paris. In the last 13 years, native President Evo Morales' socialist administration has reduced extreme poverty from 38% to 15%, and overall poverty from 60 to 35%. Socialism shrank the Gini index by an eye-popping 19% and tripled the median household income, something poor and poor Euranglo-landers can only dream about. Until this week, the economy was the fastest growing in the region, averaging over 4% a year. This will all be stolen back now, post-capitalist coup. How did this happen? They nationalized key sectors of the economy, stolen land, oil, gas, copper, lithium, and began processing their mineral wealth into value-added exports, as explained by deposed Morales here. This money was plowed back into infrastructure, schools, hospitals, rural roads, and social services, healthcare, education, and retirement pensions to improve the quality of life for the 99% at the expense of the 1%. They did it without being plundered by IMF, World Bank, gangster banksters, and their corrupt loans that enrich Wall Street and each country's local elites. Read John Perkins' book, which he is now offering for free, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. You can see how the global elite destroy entire economies to starve and exterminate millions of mostly dark-skinned poor in order to plunder trillions of dollars in assets. Another scathing expose of how Western elites legally rape the weak in the guise of the, quote, liberal world order, end of quote, is Paul Bluestein's "And the Money Kept Rolling In and Out," which was being replayed again by Argentina's neoliberal ex-president Mauricio Macri. More on this snake in a suit below. Post-war, all of this shows how the transfer of trillions of dollars of human and natural capital are extracted and exploited by Eurangloland, so their poorer and poorer citizens can borrow printed money to buy Huawei and Apple mobile phones, hire appliances, and Lenovo and Dell computers on credit, all manufactured in communist socialist China, while their elite owners become even bigger trillionaires and billionaires. When the current Western capitalist hyperbubble implodes in the near future, these same citizens will be driven even further into lower standards of living, but communist socialist Chinese, North Koreans, Laos, Vietnamese, Cubans, Eritreans, and Iranians will not. This brings us to the crux of my article. Western Europe, Bolivia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Brazil, Argentina, Mozambique, Angola, and any other countries that practice social democracy simply cannot thrive in the global capitalist order without one key ingredient, and it may not be what you think. Yes, you can nationalize core industries and, second, repatriate stolen land to build agriculture, infrastructure, development, and industrialization. The prior was done by Europe and every other social democracy after World War II. The latter was done by China, North Korea, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, Laos, Vietnam, and many others, or former Soviet states like the STANs, S-T-A-N-S, and Belarus, which just kept the land in public hands. Today, after 75 years of relentless big lie propaganda and neoliberal treachery, almost all of Europe's key industries have been denationalized, and much of its public assets have been privatized for profit in the name of free market dogma. So land and industry are not enough. Even being armed to the teeth like Venezuelans is not enough. The U.S. and Europe cannot invade or overthrow the people's will there like they do almost everywhere else, Bolivia being a prime example. If NATO tried to go in, it would get its butt whipped by many thousands of neighborhood militias. When friends like Rory Hall at the Daily Coin ardently support gun rights in the United States, I can see his point. Because Venezuela is locked and loaded, it is successfully drawing a line in the geopolitical sands. This is thanks to murdered former President Hugo Chavez, who understood Mao Zedong's rejoinder that revolution must be defended by the barrel of a gun. Thus, Venezuelans will not be occupied by NATO. But the West is killing and starving tens of thousands of Venezuelans every year with genocidal economic sanctions and stealing billions of dollars in overseas assets. Sanctions and piracy are nothing more than warfare and crimes against humanity, making a mockery of the United Nations Charter. So how can social democracies thrive in the face of global capitalist terrorism? The secret to survive and hopefully thrive is to nationalize the media. Venezuela's media is owned by the same white supremacist local elites who are destroying the country with the help of the CIA and its thousands of faux NGOs. Ditto Bolivia. We can see the suffering, slaughter, and chaos as a result. The following story illustrates the point. When neoliberal thug Macri got elected president of Argentina in 2015, only to destroy the economy with tens of billions of corrupt IMF World Bank loans that went straight into his and the local elites' pockets and onto Wall Street, I asked my friend Modi Nassani, who lives there, how the people could be duped into voting for such a blatant gangster. This after 10 years of socialist success, turning the economy around for the 99% and paying off billions of 1990s IMF World Bank theft. My friend told me Argentina's national media is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the elites, and it proved once again that big lie propaganda works. Tell lie after lie long enough, over and over, and people will accept it as reality, regardless of the facts and proof in their daily lives. Argentina's elites vomited anti-socialist, pro-neoliberal Western big lie propaganda on the masses, and after 10 years of being brainwashed, they elected to commit collective socioeconomic suicide. Socialists just won to replace mockery, and like after the 1990s, will again be stuck fixing Wall Street's gangbang in the making. But Washington, London, and Paris will do everything possible to destroy them, while the local elite media will crank up the big lie propaganda machine, the BLPM, into hyperdrive to do the same. This is why Hugo Chavez created the Pan-American state-owned media company Telesur. The problem is, with Latin America's media being owned by gangster elites, they can exclude it in their TV programming and censor it in their press and on the internet. The only countries hanging on in a world of global capitalist pain are the ones that openly tell their people they own and manage the media via the state in the interest of social harmony, economic prosperity, and to protect the nation from Eurangloland's non-stop sabotage. This includes China, North Korea, Laos, where my wife and I just spent a few days and really enjoyed it, Vietnam, Cuba, Iran, Eritrea, and I suspect most of the former Soviet republics. They all obviously know these famous quotes by heart. Former CIA Director William Casey famously said, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." Ex-CIA Director William Colby spoke the truth too, saying, "The Central Intelligence Agency owns everyone of any significance in the major media." Carl Bernstein was told by a high-ranking CIA officer, "One journalist is worth 20 agents or spies in the field." I use these three quotes when writing the China trilogy, see below. They and all my research prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the West has a very highly orchestrated press and tightly censored media, just like George Orwell and Aldous Huxley predicted. Another book I quoted in the China trilogy is Edward Bernays' book. It's called Propaganda. It's easy to download for free online. Just look for it, where he truthfully stated the following. I quote, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. We are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind." End of quote. Can it be any clearer than that, my dear Euranglolanders? Yet most of my fellow Westerners will go to the mat that they have a free press and liberty. It's a cruel mirage. When the 1% controls the media, the elites can turn the people into zombified sheeple, enriching themselves with Orwellian perpetual war while keeping the masses entertained to death. Sheldon Wolin called this inverted totalitarianism, something I've also included in my books, because clueless citizens cannot recognize or admit the truth slapping them in the face. His book, Democracy, Inc., is an essential primer to understand the simulacrum world Westerners live in. Edward Bernays simply took the Nazi big lie playbook, then called it publicity and public relations. The CIA Western corporate media adopted it very successfully to brainwash unsuspecting billions around the world, but not in China, North Korea, Laos, Vietnam, Cuba, Eritrea, and former Soviet republics. In my interview with James Bradley, he said that Western media is state managed and controlled, namely by the CIA, NSA, and the Departments of Defense and State. Douglas Valentine said the same thing in our discussion. Hell, the CIA owns and finances, with its global heroin and cocaine empire, billions of dollars in media companies and outlets around the world. How can we expect anything differently? France's yellow vests notwithstanding, no surprise, whose continuing protests in the thousands have been completely flushed down the West's Orwellian memory hole. Urangloland is a lost cause, but any other country that does not want to be raped and plundered by gangster-bankster Wall Street, invaded and occupied by NATO, and have their people exterminated and starved, need to nationalize its media 100% like China, Iran, and elsewhere. Otherwise, the devolution into a neoliberal police state hellhole like Urangloland, or color revolution chaos, butchery, and theft like much of Latin America, Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Ukraine, and too many others to count, is all but guaranteed. The other policy they need to adopt is a strong NGO control law like Russia, China, and India have done. Some NGOs do good work, but too many are nothing more than color revolution shell fronts for the CIA media complex to destroy countries from the inside. Today's Western destruction of Hong Kong is a prime example. In closing, the one exception to this is Russia, which does not have 100% nationalized media. However, for economic prosperity, social harmony, and to protect the people from Western sabotage, the government works hard to control and censor destabilizing fake news, as this article shows, staying on top of Twitter, Google, and Facebook propaganda. Russia is a social democracy with a large, successful, people-owned industrial sector and many social services for the 99% from the Soviet era. But unlike Bolivia and Ukraine, it is avoiding the West's color revolution poison pill because since 1999, Russia has gone from strength to strength under the inspired leadership of patriotic President Vladimir Putin. But like all social democracies, the problem is what happens if another Western whore, Boris Yeltsin, succeeds Putin and returns Russia to its dystopian Wall Street rape of the 1990s. Then what? It only took mockery 4 short years to bring Argentina back onto its groveling knees. Without a 100% nationalized media, Russians had better be demanding that Putin and Russian Patriots Inc. work overtime to censor all the Western overthrow garbage that is put in Cyrillic ink and on the airwaves. I would love to hear what my good friend Andrei Revsky thinks about this at the Saker, because let's be honest, without China's, Russia's, and Iran's continued anti-imperial independence and socialist success into the 21st century, humanity can kiss its ass goodbye. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland, signing out from Chiang Mai, and people have made some contributions to my fundraiser and have sent me money by PayPal. I really appreciate it. My wife is because of her broken leg, is having to get therapy 3 days a week, and with on retirement, it's expensive, and every little bit helps. So for those of you who sent some money, we really appreciate it. It helps support my work making these podcasts and writing these articles. Thank you.